Hi, it's Monday. Yep. I know I wasn't here on Friday, but I told you I wasn't going to be here on Friday because I had to get up at, what was it, like 4:30 in the morning to get some, kids to the kids, me, they're kids because they are. One of them is my child and the other is my child-in-law. But they're, adults. Nikki and Lexi from the show, you know them. They had to go on a train that left at 6 in the morning, and they had to leave at 5 to pick up a friend, David Wong. You know him from the show as well. Anyway, um, all three of them, other than me from Dyson Dungeons, are gone on a nice cruise. They're having fun, and I get to do this and do dog watching. So yes, I wasn't here on Friday, and now I'm back on Monday. And as I told you last week, I'll be dog watching, which means that this stream is totally dependent on the bathroom habits of the dogs I'm watching. They were pretty good this morning. Um, I took them out and they did what they needed to do. They've got more to do later today, but they did what they needed to do, so they should be good. For the length of the stream, probably we'll find out. That will be a we'll be finding out thing. Um, so I'm going to be working on the submarine. I'm going to take a break um, about midway through just to check on them to see how they're doing, and then well, I'll just keep working on the submarine. So I did. I painted some things over the weekend. I got this is the stand. Stand is now primed and painted black. Black against black. You can't see it there. There's the stand, and it um, this will go on it like that. Except it's from the top here. Let me see. Come on, camera guy. Let's give us a pretty good, move it around like that. There, it goes on the stand, and the stand is painted black. And then I also primed the guns, and these guns are going to be painted black. And you say, well, why didn't you just spray paint them black? Because you were spray painting the stand black. And the answer is, I really don't know. I'd been planning to hand paint them all along, and I thought, well, with the paint under, getting the spray paint underneath and on top and in nooks and crannies and everything, it might not work. There's probably some reason why. Not a really good reason, but there's probably some reason why I didn't paint them black while this was being painted black, but they're not. So there. So they're not painted black. And as usual, especially with these, priming these, about 90% of the paint, maybe 95% of the paint actually didn't get on the surfaces. So yeah, great. Just a real waste of paint, but that's how that is. So I need to put this somewhere. There's a box here with parts that are mostly done, like the conning tower, like this. This is assembled and filled in and everything. So that's a box of done stuff. And here's some little parts that I need to clean up yet, I guess. And let me zoom out so you can not see things. And yeah, and I cemented the decks onto the hull last Wednesday, and I get to take the rubber bands and that was abrupt, wasn't it? I get to unwrap that, make sure it all held together. Maybe do a little filling in on the front, on the bow and the stern, and then most of the rest of the day will be more little parts. I'll be doing more little part prep, and to the extent that that's successful, I might start putting things together. For example, I could I could attach the conning tower to the bridge, to the top of the deck. I could do that. I'm not going to install the guns because they're painted black, and the rest of this is going to be painted light gray on the top anyway. And so they're going to just stay. I'll probably keep them in here because some of the rest of this stuff will be able to be attached to the submarine. And I'm going to prime everything once it's assembled, except for the guns and the propellers. Prime everything this gray color, which I am now satisfied will be a fine color for the hull. And then I've got a light gray color that I'm going to test to see how it looks against this color. I'm going to put some tape on here, on the box here, and then spray in the box, and then just compare the two to see if they'll work. I would just assume that it did work because I would just as soon not have to go out and buy more paint just to do that. Well, I'm going to start by doing some painting. I haven't done any painting in quite a while, and it's not going to be much of it. I want to brush with. I haven't used this brush in a long time. Why not? Can't because I can't pick it up. Nice soft bristled brush that I can get the black paint on, and I'm going to paint in the box here because these parts are going to be put on this little clip, and there's a chance that they could just go flying. I don't want to lose them. Oh, what else do I need? I'm just going to keep moving stuff around because everything's in the way all the time. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I needed a piece of paper towel. I have memory. Okay, well, this is to wipe off the brush after I rinse it in the water like that. Right there. Okay, well, so anticipating what could go wrong, and there's always something. Did I break that? Yeah, I did. A little bit of the railing. I kept thinking I need to be really careful so I don't break the railing. And I did. I snapped it a little bit. Well, it's fixed now. I was able to put it back. It snapped into place. It doesn't show. But it was just one of those things. It's this delicate railing. It's molded into the top of the deck. And I keep manipulating it. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to break that. I'm going to squeeze it. And I did. And I broke it. So what could go wrong here? The main thing that can go wrong now, just to anticipate things that could go wrong, is that those little parts are held on these clips, and so far they've held up pretty well. I tested them on the clips. I clipped them to prime them. They held up during both of those. So I'm going to put them on the clip to paint them. And so there's the thing that could go wrong is that they could pop off the clip, not land in the box, okay, and then fall on the floor or something. I mean, that's what could happen. I'm going to start with the ones that are. I'm going to start with the ones that are least dangerous in terms of possibility of flying and getting lost. This one is the least likely because it's well, that paint stays sticky. Oh, It's just got a long pin on it. There's paint on the grooves of the cap here that are making it sticky, which means that I probably should take a chance and and clean the threads on the jar. I probably should do that. Here, let me see. I can. Everything's black against black, isn't it? Um, I'm going to put a little piece of paper towel down here. Not really serving any purpose except it is creating contrast. It's creating contrast so that you can. It isn't black against black. It's gray against gray. So this is the paper towel is creating contrast so that you have some chance of seeing. I'm not painting this very well. Shouldn't really wiggle the brush back and forth like that. But I was doing that. Why? I don't know. And already I stopped talking because apparently, as you know, I can't do two things at once, even simple things like talk and paint at the same time. Really, I actually should be able to do that. I used to be able to do that. I could carry on a monologue about Yogi Bear. Maybe I could talk about cartoons, just television show theme songs from a long time ago because shows used to have theme songs. Um, More than they do now. And it's possible to talk about rhyming in theme songs. I talked about the Mr. Ed theme song and how the rhyming in that is actually pretty disappointing because all they do is rhyme horse and course over and over again repetitively, which isn't very clever or very interesting. Well, probably should have spray painted it because this is coming out looking kind of, the surface texture isn't really very good. I guess I can brush it out, make it look okay. And here's another one. There are four altogether. There's a cannon, which is the one I just painted. That's its main weapon, surface weapon. And then there's this, which is I think an anti-aircraft cannon. And then there are two dual 50 caliber machine guns, which were also primarily for anti-aircraft because submarines, if they were on the surface, were vulnerable to air attack. The airplanes could attack them with bombs if they had them, or just their own onboard cannon and machine guns. And they could actually do enough damage with their guns to disable the submarine. And the thing, if they had bombs, it wasn't necessary to actually hit the submarine with the bomb, or actually any ship, really, attacking it with bombs. It isn't necessary to actually hit it because the concussive force of the explosion in the water creates enough force against the hull of the ship to buckle it, create an opening into which seawater can flow. And that means water getting into the ship and potentially sinking it. That's how depth charges work. These barrels, these 50-gallon barrels filled with explosives, they weren't expected to actually hit the submarine. Okay, and that it wasn't like a shell, a penetrating shell or something like that. It was designed to set off just a huge compression wave, high pressure water from the explosion that would buckle the hull of the submarine, or sometimes just actually do enough internal damage to the submarine that it would disable it, either sink it or force it to the surface, where it could be shot at with guns. That's actually what happened with this submarine when it was captured. How it was captured is that they were dropping depth charges on it, and they did not want to sink it. And what they wanted to do was cause enough damage to it that it would force it to the surface, where it was then boarded by sailors who were in small boats. They climbed aboard the submarine and made the crew leave, captured the crew at gunpoint, got them all off except for one. There was one casualty among the German crew. They got the crew off and then boarded the submarine, got inside as quickly as they could, kept it from being scuttled. Scuttled means intentionally sunk. Okay, 'cause the Germans, when they were leaving the submarine, you know, didn't want it to be captured, so they opened up a hatch cover that let the ocean directly in. You keep wondering why would a ship have an opening that would let the ocean in? Well, I guess so that it could be scuttled. Can't think of any other reason why. It seems kind of a dangerous thing to do, though. I mean, you're 300 or 400 feet, the huge pressure on it, and the ocean is being held back by this hatch cover. I don't know. Seems like that's a point of vulnerability, but it wasn't. I don't think we know of any submarines that sank themselves because their hatch cover failed. But yes, one of the boarding sailors, one of the people who was getting on board, found the open hatch and despite the hydraulic pressure of the water rushing in from the ocean through the hatch, they managed to close it. The submarine was kind of full of seawater. Not full, but there was a lot of seawater seeping down, and it goes to the lowest part of the submarine, which is where the batteries were kept. So it was not a good situation because salt water and batteries, electrical batteries, are that's not a good mix. Okay, the batteries could short out, they could explode, they could start a fire. There's lots of bad things that can happen when salt water comes in contact with electricity and lead acid batteries. Fortunately, it didn't happen. Um, so the submarine was like half sunk, but they managed to get a tow rope on it, and they started. Well, before they did that, they got the Enigma machines and the code books out. That was the most important part. So if the submarine sank after that, 90% of what they were attempting to do would have been done already, which is to capture the Enigma code machines and the code books that would have already been accomplished. But there's something to be said for having an intact submarine, and then you can study it, reverse engineer it, find its vulnerabilities, its strengths. If they got something you don't have that is worth having, you can steal the idea, that kind of thing. So I had the brush I wanted to use out here all along anyway. Well, so they stopped the submarine from sinking, which was what they were trying to do. They accomplished that. I'm going to put these in here on top of the paper towel because they're wet paint on top of that. They will, after they dry, they're going to come off the clips and go in this box. But first, I'm going to be doing something slightly dangerous here. I'm going to try to find a place to put this box. Chip off some of the paint here on the threads of the bottle because it's keeping it from sealing. You say, why did you put paint all over the threads on the bottle? Well, the answer to that is not intentionally. What happens is the paint gets inside the cap, okay, and here in the middle, and then it leaks down here in this ridge around it, where there's a bunch of paint, and from there, when it's recapped, it's transferred onto the bottle cap. I mean, not the bottle cap, the bottle threads from the bottle cap onto the bottle threads, where for some reason is staying all gooey. It's not drying. Well, this X-Acto knife is doing a fine job of cleaning the threads, but it's also doing a really fine job of getting itself covered in paint. Spend some time trying to get the paint goes from the bottle threads onto the X-Acto knife and then makes a mess. I don't need to see it just sticks. Now I need to try to clean that. One thing leads to another. Just does. Well, there's some black paint that peeled off of something. It's interesting. I wonder where that came from. Like a piece of wood. I don't know. Now it's trash. Now, let me see if I can clean this with water and do it without cutting myself. Now you get to watch me try to clean an X-Acto knife blade. And you go, why? Well, because I got it all full of black paint. Why? Because I was trying to clean the threads on the bottom. Why? Because they were gummed up with paint. Why? Well, I explained that about how the paint gets into the bottle cap and then gets transferred onto the threads when the bottle is closed. That's a fun thing that kids learn. We have a granddaughter who is almost 3, and it's interesting to watch their favorite words. One of their favorite words, and it's true of almost all kids and almost all cultures, right? One of the favorite first words is no. Kids learn the meaning of no right away. No matter, nine yet, non, whatever language it is, that's one of the first words. And it gets learned because it's just fun to exert one's will as a child, I guess. The latest one is now. Right? So it's not enough to just say, I want. She she learned how to do that pretty quickly. How to say I want, but now now it's not only I want, but I want now. Um, Not surprisingly, please and thank you. And the politeness stuff does not seem to come as naturally in terms of language development. That has to be taught, reinforced, rewarded, encouraged. Because please and thank you, as opposed to no or I want now, and those things come just right away. The others have to be deliberately taught. So the last time we had a video call was just a couple days ago. Yeah, Sunday, yesterday. Huh, that was just one day ago. Okay. So the deck goes on here, and this little bit of hull on the front and this little bit of hull on the back are not continuous with it. And there's just this little gap here and here. And I'm going to put some filler in on that and then sand it so that it doesn't look like it's such a gap, at least hopefully. This always turns out to be messy, more than I think it should, but it does turn out to be messy because more of this green stuff, because it comes from green stuff world. Green, they call it green putty because it's green. I don't know what color it will show up as on screen. Usually the colors are not true, but I'm going to put it on here and then put it on with a little bit of a toothpick because if I squeeze it on with this, it's way too much everywhere. See, it just keeps oozing out. These picks are in here. I put some no matter how carefully I try to apply this so that it only goes in the gap that I want to close and not everywhere else, it it just turns into a mess. I have yet to master the art of putting putty, green putty into the gaps, successfully putting them into the gaps without getting it everywhere else. And I want as little as possible on the surfaces where I don't want it, because I don't want to have to sand it, especially up here where there's the decking, the wooden planking of the decks. And the deck really was, I think it was teak. A lot of ship decks were wood, not metal, because it was less slippery. It didn't have to be painted. It didn't rust. They probably have some sort of synthetic now. I don't know. No, going from getting too much on. No, actually, I'm getting quite a lot on places where I don't really want it. And not very much on where I do. And that'll just require some nice, real sensitive sanding. Um, Probably on Wednesday. Stuff dries really fast. And I can't really, my eyes are not working. The color contrast isn't very good. It's dried out. I mean, it's a good thing that it dries quickly, I guess, but it's not a good thing when I don't move quickly enough to keep up with it. I guess that'll do. more trash. At some point, not too long from now, I'm going to get up and throw the trash away because it's kind of accumulating. See, and I managed to do this. I somehow get it all over my fingers. I don't know. I don't know how I constantly am able to. Well, in this case, I think I was actually sticking my fingers in it. But yesterday, I was doing some painting, not on a model, but on some window frames, doing touch-up painting with a little brush, and I was doing really fine. And then right at the end, it was, one of those, oh, I just got impatient kind of moments like you see here near the end of the stream, where I get something needs to be done. It's like, oh, one more. How did that happen? Where did that come from? Why is that there? How did, that kind of thing? And get impatient and try to fix it right away. So what happened was that, um, well, that happened is that I had finished touching up, and just as after I had cleaned up, I cleaned up the brush, cleaned up my hands, and I hardly got anything on my fingers. That was really good. Okay. Did that cleaning up, and I found a spot, and I thought, I don't want to clean off the brush because this paint does not clean off the brush very well for whatever reason. It's a latex paint, but it does not clean up quickly with soap and water. It just didn't. And so um, I thought, well, I'm just going to get a little piece of paper towel and dip it just a little bit in the paint and just rub it across these three little streaks of white that hadn't been covered adequately in the paint. And I did that, and I got it on the window, and then I had to clean it off the window with another piece of wet paper towel, which took the paint off of where I had just put it on. And after I did that, I had paint all over my hands somehow. And what I probably should have done is just gotten the brush, right? Touched it in the paint, just a little bit in the corner, put it on. I wouldn't have gotten it on the window. I wouldn't have had paint all over my hands. It would have just been a tiny spot on the brush that I could have washed off right away because it was still very, it hadn't set up at all yet. But no, I got impatient and I ended up spending 5 times longer cleaning up after that than I would have if I just cleaned up. I mean, just gotten the brush out. It was it was just dumb. Okay. So what needs to happen? What needs to happen? I'm going to be cleaning. I've just got a here. I've got a bunch of little parts that go onto the submarine that are still attached to the sprues, and they're really messy, and so I need to clean them up. So it's going to come back to this box because they're really tiny parts, and I clean them up in the box so that if I drop them, there's a chance that I won't lose them. And this is the container that the guns are going to go in when that paint is dry. And this is the hull that now has filler on it that's just going to sit there. This is a piece of paper towel I don't need anymore. Okay, I've got two parts here that are already off the sprue. This fell off. This I took off. I think I was working on this on Wednesday. I'm going to need some files. I'm going to need this one, this one. This one I don't have. Put a little point on it. I've got a bunch of scraps of sandpaper here that I will probably be able to find what I need amongst the scraps. So as I get a part cleaned up, I will try to explain what it is. So yeah, I'm going to need the saw too because I have to take parts off the sprue. This is a cable cutter that goes eventually, it will go right on the very tip of the bow of the submarine right there. And it looks kind of vicious. It's actually a big saw so that if the submarine gets caught in an underwater cable that is supposed to catch it, stop it from moving, or better yet, hit the conning tower and rip the conning tower off the top of the submarine and sink it, or at least disable it. Um, that's what it's supposed to do, and this is supposed to cut it. Okay, so I'm glad I turn it this way, and there is a circle there. You probably can't see it right by my thumb. One of those molding circles. This one, fortunately, is raised. So instead of having to sand down the entire thing around it down to the bottom of the circle, I just need to sand the circle off. Otherwise, it looks like I cleaned this up last Wednesday, except I didn't see that circle, so I hadn't cleaned that. So what I'm going to do is yeah, the bottom of this had some really nasty mold seams on it. That's why it's actually still a thing there, white spot. What that is or why. Where's this? There's the circle. And hopefully it will disappear quickly. The problem with those molding circles is that they do not look like they belong there, and especially after they're painted, especially if it was glossy paint, that would be a real problem. They would show up, and then you go, "Why is there a circle in the middle of the wing?" Or "Why is there a circle in the middle of the strut?" And the answer is there shouldn't be a circle there. It's not how it was made. It was just how it came out of the mold. Okay, so this is, I'm gonna just keep this in here. I'm gonna put that part in there because it's cleaned up. This is one of the diving planes that go on the side of the submarine to make it go up and down. And what we've got here is just a thin edge all the way around the perimeter here of excess plastic where it's oozed out between the two halves of the mold. That needs to come off. This again, it's, you can see it's the white line. Okay, that white line is the excess plastic and is responding to being sanded by turning white. And then when it disappears, then I know it's gone. There's a lot of it in here. And I was looking at the parts, you know, the ones I haven't taken off. There's the propellers are really awful. I don't know. They don't even look like propellers. So I think I might tackle those next just to get them done because they're just very, very badly done. Okay, the molding seam. Oh, it looks like I already sanded here. Yeah, it was really awful along here and here, and that would have kept it from fitting well. And sometime at some point, we need to test fit whether this, pin goes into the hole in the hull, or it should or not. But I'll do that before I cement it on. Okay, so there. What will happen next is I will get more parts, and I actually should take them off. I should cut them off inside the box because I found this that when I'm sawing them, sometimes at the end it just pops off, and then that's a problem. I've got like a periscope and some antenna. I think these are braces for the propeller. I'm not sure. These are forward. These are other diving planes. This is the guard for the propellers. These are capstans and other things. These are actually the propellers, believe it or not. They don't look like it at all. I guess I'm gonna start with the yeah, I said I was gonna do the propellers next. I guess I'm just gonna do that. So this bit here is the propeller guard. It goes around the bottom of the hull of the propeller guard actually, and it's supposed to scrape. This is supposed to scrape along the bottom if it hits the bottom. Um, the propellers are up here, keep the propellers from being damaged. This is the other diving plane, like the one I had just worked on. Um, this is the propeller guard. This propellers go here and here, okay? And there's little vertical diving planes back here, like that too. And oh, there's molding circles on them. Of course, there are. This is the periscope and the radio antenna. These are capstans, these tiny things, capstans. Places he tied ropes. This is, oh, that's actually a part. It's like a radio antenna or something, I think. That's an easy one to lose. My oh my. Well, I'm going to try my best to not lose parts here. But I know the propellers are very badly molded. Come on. I can't. There. I'm going to take them off the sprue and attempt to make them look kind of like propellers, I guess. The painting instructions say paint the propellers gold. The propellers were not made out of gold. They weren't even gold plated. They were made out of brass, actually. Maybe bronze. I think brass. So I've got to I'm going to paint them brass, not gold, because I don't know, maybe people weren't expected to get brass paint. I would have actually made them out of bronze. But maybe I have bronze paint too. I could paint them that color. Wow. The screw is attached right to one of the blades of the propellers. If they wanted something to really get messed up, they could hardly have done a better job of messing it up there. So this is going to pop off and go flying. I know the contrast isn't very good, is it? Everything is gray on gray on gray. Looks really dark on screen. These are going to be difficult to clean up because I don't want to destroy the edges of the propeller, but there's so much flashing on it. Screw marks. Sorry, I have to sigh. I can't even, apparently I can't even cut through plastic today. Yeah, okay. I'm going to go ahead and take the other diving plane off just to maintain some symmetry. Why do I keep covering up the box? I'm going to want to keep pulling parts in and out of this during the stream today. So these aren't, these are rudders. 35 and 36 are the rudders. No, this is the diving plane. Plane, and then there's two of them. There's that kind of weird roundy thing goes in front of it. I think, no, that's what it is. This is like a guard, okay? Because if something bumps into it, you don't want the diving plane to be damaged because then you wouldn't be able to go up and down. That would be bad for a submarine. So this hooked kind of thing that I wasn't sure what it was, and I was looking at it on the screw, is a fixed piece that goes in front of the plane, okay, that protects it in case something bumps into it. Just like this guard under here protects the propellers. Yeah, I figured out a thing. Well, this is going to be very boring for you because I'm just going to be sanding and filing and grumping about how badly these parts are put together. Um, so yeah, just like usual. No, I was looking for the paper and the sanding block, and it was over there, but I found it. I went, ha, there's a sound of triumph. I found it. I didn't lose it. Ha. also as an exclamation of surprise. Ah, oh, I found it. Oh yeah, I was going to talk about theme songs and rhymes. And I did go on and on about the Mr. Ed song because all they do was rhyme horse and course over and over and over again, which in some ways, it sounded kind of clever, but it, you know, it wasn't, it didn't take a lot of, it didn't take recourse, recourse, course, course, recourse to a rhyming dictionary just to say horse, course, course, horse. Although it in the second verse learned that the word course has different meanings. Like you're always on a steady course, which means a steady direction. And then the phrase "of course" doesn't work at all unless you put the "of" on it. Okay, no one can talk to a horse course. That doesn't make sense. Of course means with certainty. Why? I don't know. Of course it does. Maybe it's related to the use of the word course as your intended direction, but that would be on course, like you're on course, which means you're going in your intended direction. Of course, I'm not sure. It's kind of a weird thing. Words are weird that way. But those were not very good rhyming. Let's see the Yogi Bear theme song. Yogi Bear is smarter than the average bear. Yogi Bear is always in the ranger's hair. Have a picnic basket, you will find him there. So that's not bad. Those are three words that all rhyme. That's not really a forced rhyme, really, because it's consistent with Yogi Bear being in the ranger's hair, and you'll find him there. But then it closes with Yogi Bear is smarter than the average bear, which is how it started. But that's fairly typical of songs, isn't it? To be highly repetitive. There are some popular songs where there's just like two lines that are repeated over and over and over and over again. That's the whole song. Yeah. So the lyricist didn't really have to work very hard. And that's kind of, I think, unfortunately typical of a lot of popular music is really aren't any lyrics, just like two lyrics repeated endlessly. Well, it's not endlessly. I shouldn't say that. It feels endless, but of course it ends. Usually it ends by it just sort of fading away. That was I haven't listened to popular music in, I will admit, many decades. So once it got past about 73 or 74, which is a long time ago, I really just like, why is all disco? I don't know, listen to disco. And then for a little while in the late 70s and 80s, the first new wave. Apparently, there's another new wave. So there's an original new wave, and then there's another new wave. That's not very clever, is it? Just use the same words to describe something. But yeah, so the first one, people like Elvis Costello and folks like that came out, and then music in the '80s wasn't, it got kind of repetitive. Everything had a saxophone um, solo in it. That kind of that was a thing then. But so then there was a burst of time, kind of in the mid '80s, when I listened to music again. Although I can't really remember the names of the songs, I recognize them, but I don't know the names of the songs. And sometimes the artist, I can remember that kind of sometimes, but not much. But yeah, for a while there, lyrics just stopped. But theme songs, there. So Tom Terrific had a pretty good theme song. I won't repeat that. I've done that over and over again. Um, Super Chicken wasn't bad, although "Bawk, bawk, bawk, bawk," well, it was a chicken, so I guess that was legitimate. Not really a lyric as much as a sound. Okay, now to get this off, where the screw is attached without harming the blade, which is thin and fragile, is one of the propellers. So again, you really can't see this stuff on camera because the camera, I can't get the contrast really well. Camera doesn't focus that well. But if you could, well, maybe you can. Um, Along the edge of the propeller, see how that's white? That's lighter color there. That's flashing. That's excess plastic that oozed out between the halves of the molds and isn't supposed to be there at all. That has to come off without distorting the shape of the propeller. Some theme songs didn't have any lyrics at all. Like Mission Impossible. Some were kind of good, like Get Your Kicks on Route 66. And 77 Sunset Strip. There were a couple of versions of it. One had actual lyrics. The other one just said 77 Sunset Strip over and over again. That wasn't that wasn't really good. The 60 Minutes theme song, it's still on. It's just a clock ticking. That's it. That was the theme song for 60 Minutes. I mean, it wasn't really a song, but it was the equivalent. Let's see, there's spy shows. There was Secret Agent Man, but the lyrics to that were sort of incomprehensible. It sounded like Secret Asian Man, because you know slurring the words while singing is kind of a thing. And it was kind of fun too, because sometimes the lyrics really, it didn't sound at all like what they were trying to say. Of course, Louie Louie or Louie Louie um, is the most famous slurred lyric song, where it's the way it was sung in the version that was most popular on the radio. You couldn't make out the lyrics at all, so people started imagining all sorts of words. They thought, well, they were being dirty lyrics. They were saying naughty words, even though the artist claimed they weren't. And lyrics were actually published the lyrics of what. And if you look at the published lyrics and listen to it, you can kind of hear the words that they say that they're singing. One I always thought was the funniest was "There's a bad moon on the rise," and you listen to it and it does not sound like there's a bad moon on the rise. It sounds like there's a bathroom on the right, which is, that's okay. I mean, it's good to know that there's a bad moon on the rise was kind of, that was a good warning, because the song was warning you to not go out tonight. You're bound to take a fright because there's a bad moon on the rise. But okay, so you go out tonight and you take a fright. Um, when you're frightened, sometimes you just, oh, I really got to go, because it scares the pee out of you. So then it's actually, don't go out tonight. You're bound to take a fright. There's a bathroom on the right. Actually, is really a helpful. That's really helpful to know that. And that's the best part about this, is I can just wander from one thing to the next. I have to refrain from politics, so I won't say anything about somebody else who tends to just wander from one thing to the next while they're talking. Nope, nope, nope. But, you know, I'm old. There isn't any music playing. It's really boring watching me try to make these look like propellers, despite the fact that they're molded really, really badly. Um, Talking about theme songs, why not? Unless somebody shows up in chat and distracts me this, from nothing, just distracts me from babbling on about nothing in particular. See, that's why I'm doing this in a box or over a box. Is when I drop it like that, it hits the paper towel, and it stayed in the box, and I was able to find it. If I were doing this over the hard wooden workbench, it would hit the wooden workbench and bounce and probably land on the floor. And it's a little darker than the floor, but there'd be a really good chance it would be lost. That's happened before with parts. They like go under the workbench. I'm gonna need a slightly coarser, I think. It's not coming. Excess plastic is not coming off fast enough with that. Yeah, this is much better. It's actually coming off. It doesn't keep me. It doesn't help me hold on to it. But when I am able to hold on to it, it's removing the excess plastic quickly. I could have lost this thing 2 or 3 times already. hadn't taken the precaution of doing this over a box. But yeah, song lyrics, slurred word song lyrics. That's always a fun thing. I think there was, I'm not the only one who ever noticed those. So sometimes there was actually a TV thing about it, show, TV show about uh, slurred lyrics. You couldn't understand what they were saying, and comparing and contrasting what they claimed they were saying with what it sounded like. There's a bathroom on the right was one of those, although other people claim that they'd never heard it said that. It's not going to stay in my fingers. How's the time going here? Hmm, 11. Yeah, when I'm done with these propellers, they're taking, I knew they were going to take a while. They're really a mess. They're hard to hold on to. I have to be pretty careful. That's another thing. Why is it pretty careful? Pretty means like good looking, right? But it also means kind of, as a quantity measure about how it's pretty much. It's kind of a weird thing. Another weird thing about words. Where did that come from and why? Pretty good. So it's a measure of kind of quantity, the quantity of a quality. It's not quite, it means it's not quite like totally excellent. It means pretty good means maybe a B plus. Kind of like my modeling. My modeling is pretty good. It is that. So I guess if you were to grade it, pretty good would be like a B plus. Believe it or not, this is coming along. It's kind of looking like a propeller. I'm kind of getting the weird little seams between the blades here that shouldn't be there. Kind of getting those out, making those disappear. These little raised ridges here between the leading edge of one and the trailing edge of the other. I need to, down in the here, right at the base of it, where it attaches. There's just a whole lot of plastic there. And it is actually quite hard to get off because I can't hold. Oh, there's a lot of it there. I'm scraping it. Sometimes just scraping it with a fingernail is as effective as anything. But that's got to come off. It's got to be a clean edge. Otherwise, it won't fit on the shaft. It won't look right when it's on. There, it's cleaned up there, but it kind of extends around the edge here. Yeah, I would have definitely lost it that time. Yeah, it would have been gone. So when I'm painting these, this will be a little bit interesting. Um, say, well, there's nothing to hold on to, but what there is there's a hole there. And so just like I was the opposite of kind of the opposite of using the clip, the alligator clip on the little pins on the bottoms of the guns, what I can do is I can take a toothpick and jam it into that hole so that it holds tight, and then I can paint it because it'll be like a stick. It'll be held up on a stick, basically. Basically, I mean, it's not basically. It is. Is this what it's going to be? It's going to be held up on a stick. Once upon a time, ages ago, when I said basically, it reminded me of what I consider to be the overuse of modifiers, adjectives, and adverbs, especially by AI. If you ever look at something written by AI, it's way too many, in my opinion, modifiers, especially it tends to be self-congratulatory in aren't I clever kind of way. Kind of like a young kid, maybe a 3 or 4 year old who constantly needs praise for, you know, eating after every spoonful of food or something, constantly, constantly asking you to tell it how great it is. So I think I've always kind of not used a lot of modifiers. Like why? Unless they're really adding value as opposed to whatever, just words. Um, so my writing was always criticized, especially if I tried to do creative writing as just being dull, lifeless. But it was just adequate. It was accurate. said what needed to be said, and it didn't say more. But uh, yeah, it's like saying pretty good. It's like basically, I'm just doing. It's like I'm just doing this. It's not basically at all. You know, that word is supposed to mean something. Essentially, it's this. It is what it is. Don't make more of it than there is. Well, let's see how long it takes to get this propeller. Once this propeller is done, I'm going to take a break for two reasons. One is I need to take a break for my own purposes, and the other is to check on the status of the dogs that I'm supposed to be watching, make sure that they are behaving and that they don't need to do any more bathroom stuff. I have promised that this is actually a prediction, not a promise. I am predicting that you will be hearing about the bathroom behavior of the dogs I'm watching as kind of a regular feature of this stream for the next 2 weeks. So I'll be dog watching for a little over 2 weeks. Started last Friday and will continue all of this week and all of next week and the first couple of days of the week after. This is the longest stint of continuous dog watching I've done with these dogs. It will be almost twice as long as the longest stint. So far, after 3 days, they're behaving pretty well. They've been eating, they've been eliminating as necessary, outside, places where they should, even better, right? The break is going to be, not one of those 2 minute, I'm not going to turn the brake sign on. The break is going to be probably more like 15 minutes. It probably won't be like the old fashioned breaks. When I was streaming on the schedule was 4 hours from 10 until 2. And I take a break and I say I'll be back in about 20 minutes or something. It takes 45. It probably won't be that long. I can't guarantee. It depends on, you don't know. Why do I say that? It depends on um, whether the dogs need to go out again or not. And if they do, whether they get on with it and do their duty, do their doo-dooey. That was a doo-doo joke. That's another thing when I was talking about kids and how our granddaughter has learned now, learned no before, and I want has learned now is, I guess I can say it, she can say it, is pee pee and caca. Right? That was a big thing like a few weeks ago. What's your panda bear's name? It's caca. Oh, oh, oh. It was kind of amazing how a almost 3-year-old joking. Okay, telling, telling things, saying things that are meant to be funny. Yeah, sense of humor seems to develop pretty automatically and at a young age, and that's a fairly typical first humor is the pee jokes. Usually about the time they're learning to be potty trained, they're paying attention to that. You know, these definitely need to be washed before they're primed and painted. By even attempting to prime them, that'll be interesting. All these tiny little parts. They will be primed in a box, and hopefully they will not be blown away. I learned that the hard way once. First time I learned it, I learned that lesson, which is when you spray and paint on little parts like this, they move. And they could, and then that's really a mess, really, because not only have they moved, and you have to try to retrieve them, but they're all covered in paint. So you don't want to mess it up and screw up the surface texture with fingerprints and everything, but you can't avoid it because you can't pick them up otherwise, and you can't let them lay where they are. So yeah, when you're painting tiny parts like this, I definitely recommend keeping them inside a container, kind of like a box, so that when they do, if they do move, and they're likely to, more likely than not, um, they won't go too far. In this particular case, I'm going to try to secure them by sticking them on a stick. So the ones with little protrusions, little prongs that go into a hole, like the diving planes. Okay, those will be held on alligator clip, like the guns were, things with a hole in them, which go onto a protrusion. These are held on with sticks, and that has in the past worked mostly okay. Not always. Sometimes they're not attached firmly to the stick, and they will fall off or blow off. That's not good, but that has happened. And a good deal of falling into the box happening here. Illustrating with disturbing frequency. There's an adjective. An unnecessary adjective. I should have just said, frequently falling into the box as opposed to disturbing. I don't know if you're disturbed by it or not, but it makes it sound more interesting to say. Add a modifier. Getting close to being finished. It's that raised bit, the trailing, leading and trailing edges of the propeller. That Actually, most unless you were paying attention, you could miss that, and then it would show up as a weird discontinuity in the once it was painted. Like, why is that ridge there? Well, that ridge there is because that's how the plastic was molded, and I didn't catch it, and I didn't sand it away. So there, that's why it's there, because it shouldn't be, and I didn't do anything about it. Now it's too late. That's not too bad. Put it in the box. There. That's it. That's what's been accomplished in an hour here, pretty much. Those were those bits here. So when I come back from break, I'm not going to do the most tiny parts. I'm going to do these things hold up the cable cutter. This guards the propeller. This guards the propeller. This is the periscope and radio antenna. These parts here, those are going to come off and get cleaned up. I'll just leave them here. Yeah, they're fairly, large sized parts. I think it'll be okay doing that. I'd like it if this box would close. It's got a latch on it here. There's a tab here that's supposed to go into this slot and close it, but it doesn't. If the tab's too big for the slot, this pushes in, but it doesn't. But unless I'll keep it in a box. I'm going to keep the box in a box, so if it tips over, the parts can be recovered. Okay, I'm going to take my break now and put the break screen on. That will say I'll be right back. I will not be immediately back. I'll be back in like 15-ish kind of minutes, somewhere between 10 and 20. Yeah. See you soon. Well, that took longer than I thought by a lot because, well, as I said, the pace of this is all going to depend upon the elimination habits of the dogs, and they needed to eliminate, and it took a little longer than I thought. So there. I'm going to just rate top off and out of the box and onto the floor. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, and fortunately, I was able to find it. It's kind of an odd thing. I'm gonna have to see how this fits. Looks like it goes in. No, I guess that's just a weird piece of plastic on there. I'm muttering about this, the propeller shafts here. I'm not sure how they fit into the hull. I'm going to have to test that. I'll just check on it now. Oh, yeah, it just goes in like this, so that excess plastic on it is just excess plastic. There are more parts holding up the cable cutter than there are practically anything else. It's got two braces on it, like this. Here it's attached in three different parts. Well, I guess it has to be pretty strong because if it hits the cable, you want it to cut the cable and not break off. There's redundancy in the support on the cable cutter. All of these parts are meant to be round, but they all have ridges on them, mold seams, basically. I could call them that. Basically, mold seams have forward modifiers. More words than you need just to say them. So as usual, I will file the sprue mark so it's 90% gone. Put a circle on that. And there's a molding circle right there. Well, this will just, these parts just always take so long because there's actually a lot of surface area and they're kind of delicate because I don't want to break them. Doesn't mean I won't break them. It means I don't want to break them. By snapping the part in half or something like that. Probably not in half. By snapping the part that some is breaking it. I don't want to. I just don't want to break it at any point, whether it's in half or a quarter or a third or some irrational fraction. Just I just don't want it to break. It seems like sometimes the worst bits are right at the edges like this, right on the ends. And for some reason, there's more mold seam from the molds there than anywhere else. They're not quite lined up right. And it's those spots that are most visible. Yeah, there's the circle. It was almost invisible. That's an indentation too. That's too bad. That just makes it harder to get rid of because I need to sand the whole thing down to the bottom of the circle instead of just sanding the circle down to the level of everything else. depending on how deep it is, it can actually distort the part. But better to have it slightly wavy than to have a circle on it where there shouldn't be a circle. No, to spend hours and hours and hours sanding little seams onto these parts. And yeah, this is where someone would say, you know, they make miniature power tools that could cut your time down to like a third of the amount of time that you're spending on this. And I would say, yes, I'm aware of that. And I probably, even without people going to patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons, patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons, become a patron, and um, you get access to our DM notes, session notes about what the DM was planning for the session and how it actually turned out. And sometimes they're quite different from each other. Our improv warm ups, our hot takes and cold reads, which used to be, and you can still watch the old ones about asking AI to tell us stuff and it would make stuff up. We got For a while, it was just silly. It would just do silly things. There was one where it said moon maybe a dozen times. Every fifth word was moon. It was kind of funny when it used to do that. And then it got boring. And then we asked it to talk about us as players, not just characters. And it made stuff up. It just absolutely hallucinated things about us as real people that never happened. That was actually pretty disturbing, is to have AI. I mean, if somebody else had asked that with the same prompt we had, they would be getting lies, just total lies about us in real life. And then AI had the gall. That's a cool word, isn't it? Had the gall to say, "Oh, did you enjoy this thing that I just lied about? You want me to come up with more?" I was like, "No. Why did you lie about us? Why did you make stuff up that didn't really happen about real people?" We didn't ask it that. We would have just said, "Oh, because I thought it would be fun and entertaining to do that." It's actually done that to us when we asked it. Why did you? It created a new character. We were asking it to talk about our campaign, our D&D campaign, and it just made up this new character that didn't exist in the game, in the show, didn't exist in the show at all, and it made up Hildy, created Hildy, and then started got real excited about its own creation, and this over the span of a couple of weeks started making Hildy like the leader of the group almost. And one time we said, where did Hildy come from? And it just said, well, I thought that would be fun. I thought you'd enjoy me making up a new character when you didn't ask me to. Like, no, it wasn't fun. It was just disturbing. One more example of AI feeding on itself. And a lot of AI, it's just for non-commercial uses, like non-business uses, is just designed to keep you engaged so that you can see more ads or start paying money for a subscription so that you can engage yet even more in this. So anyway, You get if you become a patron on patreon.com/Tyson Dungeons, you get access to that, and you can see those old ones on Hot Takes with Cold Reads on YouTube, and you can relive with us the experience of having AI just be absurd and kind of entertaining that way, or boring as all get out because all it did was add adjectives and adverbs to everything, or hallucinate stuff about real life, real people. Just make up things about real people that didn't happen. So we stopped asking AI to do stuff because it was either boring or disturbing, and so we are now doing random stuff on Hot Takes and Cold Reads, kind of like this, kind of like my monologues in a way, and that will start off with something and just take us wherever it leads us. Usually, it leads us astray. I mean, it does. We lead ourselves astray, which is part of the entertainment value. But this all started because I said that I could get a power sander, a little miniature power sander that would do this in less than a third the time, maybe 20%, maybe even less. I mean, really fast compared to this. And what I was going to say is that I probably could afford to get one of those, out of my personal funds without having a patron on Patreon. Although you should still become a patron on Patreon, not so that I can get a power sander, because I'm not going to, but because you should support our show, which is really a really amazing Dungeons and Dragons show. And this sad little spinoff is making an effort to get you to become a fan of our D&D show. But the other reason I'm not going to get a power sander is because it probably, in my hands, would cause more harm than good. Okay? So instead of like just rubbing it with sandpaper and taking it being really slow, it would just go bzz, and instead of cleaning up the part, it would probably destroy it because, well, just because that's what happens when one's eyesight is not great, and eye-hand coordination is not so great either. So there, I'm not getting a power sander, and you'll just have to live, if you're watching this at all or listening to it, with incredibly slow lack of progress in the cleaning up of the parts so that they can be eventually attached to the submarine. And it will be eventually, it will happen. You've seen that before, where it looks like absolutely nothing is happening for weeks and weeks on end, stream after stream after stream. Is anything ever going to come of this? Is all you're going to do is mutter on about having to sand little parts that are poorly molded? And the answer to that is pretty much yes, until then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, quickly, I mean, compared to that, relatively quickly, that's actually a good use of a modifier, relatively quickly. That is to say, faster than the rest of it. So in relation to the I shouldn't say glacial because that isn't, I talked about that before. That's not really an appropriate thing for slow, rather than the very slow progress that you were seeing up until that point. It comes together like the car, the GT350. It's like anything ever going to happen with this, and in this span of 2 weeks, the whole thing was finished because most of it is preparation of parts, and then the assembly especially if they're pre-painted. The assembly is kind of anticlimactic. Oh, well, now I've got a bunch of parts. I'm just going to stick them together and it's done. That's what's kind of going to happen to the submarine, but not quite in that order, in that a lot of the parts are going to be put on before it's painted because the whole submarine is gray. There's two shades of gray, only two, not 50. Actually, if you count the black as a shade of gray, there's three shades of gray in the submarine. And one of them is just going to be the primer. And then that's the bottom of the hull. Yeah, this part is not, this part is more more problematic than it looked at first. That's not unusual, but it is annoying because it's hard to hold it. Um, so in this case, the parts are going to be attached. Most of the parts are going to be attached before it's painted. And then the whole thing is going to be sprayed with dark gray primer, the same color primer that the guns were painted before I painted them black. And then I'm going to tape the bottom of the hull. Somehow I'm going to get a beautiful, in exactly the right place, tape line across the hull and cover up the bottom of the hull, which is then going to stay the dark gray primer color, and paint the top of the submarine, all of the bits and pieces and nooks and crannies, probably at least two coats to make sure it's covered, because there's going to just be a lot of textural things that could be missed with the spray paint, and it require rotating it and getting a spray on it from different directions and stuff like that. And what I could do, and some would recommend this, is and the model, the painting instructions suggest painting all those parts before assembling them. But I want the paint to look uniform. I don't want to be, if I can avoid it, I would prefer not to be um, attaching painted parts. I prefer to be attaching the parts unpainted and then painting them so that the paint is continuous and I don't have the risk of marring the paint with whatever cement I use, probably contact cement, especially since it's spray paint and doesn't hold up to the contact cement as well as the acrylic. Yeah, every single little edge here, every single one has lines on it from the mold seam. It looks like they're gone, and then I turn it and it looks like they're not. Now on Wednesday, the same thing is going to be happening. Is I will plan to start on time. Whether that happens or not is fully determined by the bathroom habits of the dogs. Okay, their their bathroom habits are driving, are determining the whether and when things on the stream occur. Just like they did during break. Like, oh, this is going to be a short break. And then they said, oh no, your break is about to end. I now need to go poop. And they did. It didn't take them too long to get to doing it, but it extended the break almost twice as long as it would have otherwise because they didn't make that decision until I was ready to end the break. Like I said, they are now in charge of my life pretty much for the next 2 weeks because it's way better to have that happen outside than inside. I can say that with great surety. You say, is this ever going to be done? This is why, it looks like it takes forever. And it kind of does. It feels like it takes forever too. But then eventually the parts are done and they test fit and they don't fit. And then they're modified a little bit until they do fit and then they're cemented on. And then after they're cemented on, I will be finding out, not determining, I'll be finding out to the extent to which I have a problem or not, whether um, waiting to paint this until I've been fully assembled so that the painting looks more uniform or not turns out to be a good idea or bad. The two things that are most likely to go wrong are not the only things that can go wrong because, as you know, if you've been watching this for any length of time, things go wrong that are, let's just say, unanticipated. And I usually anticipate pretty well that something's going to go wrong. But things go wrong that, how in the world could that happen? That happens. But the things that are most likely to happen that I can think of, you know, the thing that's most likely to happen is something I wasn't thinking of happening. It'll just be like, how did that happen? Is or that one apart, and so there's lots of little nooks and crannies and all sorts of edges and interior bits and things that need to be painted like this. Okay, it needs to be painted on the top and the bottom and all around, and that that something will just get missed. The spot will be missed. Okay, and then, well, that won't be a total disaster. I can use the spray paint. I've done this before. Spray a little bit of into it. If it's just spots, like little dots of paint, spray it into a container, touch a brush to it, touch it to the unpainted spot, do the touch up. The other thing that I can anticipate potentially happening is that, especially while I am putting the tape on the hull and I need to hold it and rotate it, is that I will break off one of the pieces, like this piece that's attached to the submarine, and will become detached, not unattached, detached, because it was, attached and now it's not. That's something I'm concerned about, and even though I keep saying I'm going to be really careful not to do it, just like I was really careful not to break the railing on the main hull, I still did because it's can't believe I did that kind of situation. And then I'll go, yeah, of course I can believe I did that. That's what I do. I do these. I can't believe I did that kind of messes. So it's something to look forward to. Um, you know, probably not really looking forward to watching me test fit little parts that maybe will and maybe not fit and then getting them to fit and cementing them together. It'll look like things are happening. It will look like the submarine is coming together, but that will be misleading in that even though parts are being attached to the submarine, there will still be so many opportunities for things to come detached or badly painted or broken or, you know, in other words, uh, interesting things happening that shouldn't be happening. I wonder if I could use slightly coarser sandpaper on this and make it go faster. I don't know if you can see this, but you know, there's that white line. No, is this even on camera? There's a white line along here where the mold seam is. And this is fairly coarse sandpaper, but why does it feel like it's taking so long? Why does it feel like it's almost done and then I at it again and then it's not? Why, I may ask, over and over and over again. Can't they just clean up their act when they're making these parts and have the mold come together? And they just don't, and they probably never will. Even the book I read, I got a long, long time ago about how to make models, you know, so that they look good. Is one thing they tell you is when you've got a part like this that's supposed to be round, it's not going to be. There's going to be a ridge on it. They just say that right off. There's going to be a ridge where the mold came together, and you need to carefully sand that away until it's gone because it's just going to be there, and you have to get rid of it. Seems to be particularly bad. Like the parts don't. Yeah, this is one of those situations where the two halves of the mold really didn't quite line up. So it's more than just a seam. It's a misalignment that needs to be sanded away. this is this is just worn out. I don't think I have any that's not worn out. I have any in the box here. 1,000, 1,000, 150. I really need like a 400 or a 600 grit. I don't want to use 150. That would just gouge everything. 1,000 wouldn't go fast enough. It would take forever. Hmm. Okay. Well, I'm going to look for a 400. Maybe there's a 400 left in here. I've got plenty of 150s and plenty of 220s. There's a 400. A couple 400s. A little coarser than I probably should use, but I'm not too worried about the surface texture on these parts because they're just I mean they're just it is what it will be what it is. What I'm most concerned about is sometime in this lifetime getting rid of the mold seams. And so a more aggressive paper, even though at least the scratches are not going to be visible because uh, the whole part, there aren't any large surfaces. Okay. There's just tiny, all these things are tiny surfaces. That, yeah, that can't be held. Yeah, see, I sand away at it, and there's still shows. And it's too bad that you can't really see this on camera because sanding like this, when there's you know mold seam or misaligned parts, it leaves a little white ridge, not white, but a lighter colored ridge where it's the high point, you know, and it tells you when you're done when that disappears from sanding it. And there, when you're sanding a little piece like this, it's a good thing to not let it flex. I almost did. I was holding it too far back and it was flexing, and that's the kind of thing that could just suddenly snap. Of course, it would be sudden. Things don't slowly snap, do they? Oh, it would very, very slowly snap. No, that's not what happens. It would just snap. Once again, using a modifier that doesn't really add any information. It suddenly snapped. Oh no, how could really snapping snapping isn't anything other than sudden. That's why it's called a snap. You know, it slowly came apart, which is different than snapping. But no, always use adjectives and adverbs. It adds interest to your writing. That's what I was told. If you're going to be a creative writer, you got to use all these modifiers and similes and metaphors. It's not never say he looked up, sky was blue, or he looked up, there were no clouds. You could even then be redundant and say the sky was blue. Well, of course, if there weren't any clouds, the sky was blue. If you're on Earth anyway, if you're on Mars, it wouldn't be. But they looked up into the cloudless sky. Okay, that's fine. That looked up into the cloudless sky that was the color of the sun dappling on ocean, the calm, waveless ocean, as opposed to lift up into the cloudless sky. you know, and then it's not, and then it has to be like a simile, like it's not just, and the sky blue. Really? Because we all know what that is. It's a particular color. But no, it has to be blue like something else. No, it isn't blue like something else. It's blue like the sky because it's the sky that's blue. Something else might have a color that's similar to the sky blue, but the sky itself is going to be sky blue. It's not going to be like some other color. But that's not how people write, because then it's not interesting or colorful or something. That's I would never be good at writing fiction because I don't I don't add embellishments when they don't add anything. Looked up into the blue sky. I like looked up into the cloudless sky better because you could look up into the blue sky, but maybe only a little bit of it was blue. Maybe it was just a patch of blue. You could say that. You could say that. Looked up at the patch of blue between the clouds, or among, yeah, showing where the patch of blue between the clouds. If there's just one patch, it's not among. Among makes it sound like there's more than one patch. Hmm. Well, let's go on about that for a while. How would you say that accurately? Looked up at the single patch of blue in the cloudy sky. You could say, looked up at the patch of blue, the single patch of blue, which makes it clear that there's just one patch of blue. In the otherwise cloudy sky, the otherwise is not necessary, because if you just say the single patch of blue in the cloudy sky, you know, other otherwise all the rest of it is cloudy, right? It's already implied in that, but no, you have to add something, and then oh yeah, then you have to say it, showing like a glistening sapphire on a queen's necklace or something, because you couldn't just have this single patch of blue in the sky. It has to be like a glistening sapphire on a royal necklace. Having a sky blue sapphire is actually kind of kind of rare, but you know that's neither here nor there, is it? That's just how words are used. This is slightly as bad as less worse than it looks in terms of sand the whole thing to make sure that this has a uniform. What's that? Great. There's a molding circle on the side of the periscope tower. I was going to say I needed to sand the sides so that the texture of the surface was uniform after sanding off the sprue mark here. But it turns out that I need to sand the side, not to make the texture uniform, but to get rid of the circle. One of those vicious little circles that shouldn't exist. I will say that about it every time. That's the periscope. That's the front of the periscope. I should be careful not to harm that, because that's supposed to look like a periscope. Other than the molding circle, I have to say that compared to the other parts, this, this does not have much of a molding seam on it. All about that. Scarcely at all. This side just needs to be scratched. This needs to be scratched to keep a uniform surface. And this side needs to have that circle disappeared. There, you can clearly see the circle now. No, see it? It fills in with sanding dust from the process of rubbing away all of the surface around it until it is down to the same level as the bottom of the circle. Of course, it has to be an indented circle. It's right in the center. And you could probably say, oh, that's just part of the part. But no, it's not. There is no circle in the periscope. It's a really deep one too. This is unfortunate. A good way to hold it. I really am not liking holding it by these, because holding it down, I could break one off. Break one off. Of course, it'll come if it breaks. It's going to come off. That was see. That's another redundant word. I could break one. I suppose. I suppose it's possible that I could break, but not come off completely. I suppose that is possible, right? That it could fracture and just dangle there, as opposed to break off. Oh, this thing is really down in there. I suppose. Oh, it's like a porthole or something. No, it's just an intentional flaw in the mold of the part. That is being really annoyingly persistent. It's one of those things that if that wasn't there, 6 or 7 minutes of our lives wouldn't have been spent making it disappear. was that was just an unfortunate thing, but it needed to go. To reround the edges here. Enough plastic came off of it that there was kind of a ridge there. Okay, well, it's okay now. And at least so far, I haven't I haven't broken the. I need to sand this side a little more to make it uniformly coarse. And this is the this has big holes here. See, that looks like it actually should be there, but it's not. I checked it out, and these things are supposed to go directly into an opening in the hull, and that would just be in the way. Made it look like it was supposed to like kind of hook onto something, but no, it isn't. It's just excess plastic. Oh my. Oh, okay. It's time to end. Yeah, time went blazingly fast when you're having such a good time getting rid of pieces of plastic that aren't supposed to be on your piece of plastic. I'm just going to file away the excess here on both sides. It really made it look, but oh, damn it. Oh, okay. Well, they were supposed to be there. I just filed away something that was supposed to be there. So I'll file it off on the other side, and then it will be what it will be. I didn't look at it carefully enough. So I'll get rid of the screw here. So this part isn't done, but my time is up. My time is up. I'm going to finish now, and say I'll be back on Wednesday and at more or less 10, and we'll get what I can get done in between the demands of the dog's toileting behavior. Okay, so that's what's going to happen, and this part will just stay here. It's not finished. These parts will stay in the box. The hull of the submarine will stay there. Just cover it with this. Oh, and my final act today is I'm going to put the painted guns into this little box. Did I miss a spot? Really? They need touching up. I'm not going to do that today. There's just a little flaw in the paint there. So I'm just going to leave them like this. I could do painting touch up here at the end of the stream, but I'm just not going to. There's just too much that could go wrong. I could spill the paint. I could pop them off somehow. Move that there. Put this here. Put that there. Like that. Okay. I'm going to finish for today. I'll be back on Wednesday at more or less 10 o'clock, depending on the dog behavior. Thanks for watching. Watch our D&D show. You have to do that. See you later.